Good morning. Hello. Welcome to Celebrate Southern Africa. My name is Dawn Denton, and today we have Paula Quinsee joining us from a really warm Joburg. And as you can tell, I'm really cold in the UK. So I am thrilled to talk about your two amazing books that you've got there behind you. And I wanted to start off really with the name of your business, Engaged Humans. I love the word engaged. What does it mean when someone is truly engaged?
Hi, Dawn, and thanks for having me with you this morning. It's a great pleasure to chat to you. Yeah, engaged humans, for me, it's around my personal belief is that I think we've lost the ability to connect on a human level, both in our personal spaces and in the workplace. And I'm very passionate about people and human connection. And so that's what our business does, is we facilitate human connection by bringing it back into the workplace and bringing it back into the homes. We live such disconnected lives these days in our personal lives. Just look at the divorce rate as an example. We're stuck on our devices and we're not fully present for our partners and our children, and our friends and our family. And in the workplace, we are all stuck on this hamster wheel of this busy, do, and we've forgotten how to be. And that's why we're seeing things like toxic corporate culture. We're seeing things like mental health issues. We're seeing things like burnout, and just people going through the motions and not being fully engaged to themselves and then to everybody around them as well.
That's really interesting, because I do see, we've all seen the impact, and I'm sure we've had that. Please, can you put your phone down when I'm talking to you, and, that kind of thing in the home. But I think I'd like to believe that this is just a glitch in society. Do you think that this is could perpetuate worse things, or do you think that we as human beings have it innate to pull that back?
I think we do have the ability to pull it back, but it does require a level of self-awareness and self-consciousness around our habits that we may not be aware of and how entrenched those habits have become. So, for example, doom scrolling, as it's often referred to, we sit and we scroll through social media wherever we are as a way of passing time. So whether you're sitting in a queue, whether you're sitting at a restaurant, whether you're at home on the couch, whatever it might be, it's become escapism on the one hand, it's become distraction on the other hand. Depending on what your personal circumstances are, it's avoiding loneliness. Because we may not have relationships or connections in our personal lives. And for some of us, we think it's a way of switching off, because we've switched off from whatever else is going on in our lives. But the reality is that our brain hasn't switched off when we talk about giving our brains a mental break, because we're still connected to devices.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we do think it's like, oh, I've had a really tough day, I'm just going to sit down and scroll through my phone. And actually you're perpetuating all that other stuff that goes on in our heads. So that would cause conflict in a home. And I see, one of your books is called Embracing Conflict. Now, I find that conflict is obviously it's a negative experience, but there's some benefits to conflict, because when you mention about embracing, what does that mean?
Yeah, and that's exactly how the book came about. One of my accreditations is I'm an Imago relationship therapy practitioner, which is it was founded in America, and it's around understanding how upbringing shapes and influences who we become, and then how we forge relationships with other people, and primarily our romantic relationships. And the reality is that we are not taught how to deal with conflict. We're not taught how to have difficult conversations. We're not taught those skills in school. We're not taught them in university. Our parents don't teach us how to have difficult conversations, and I'm generalizing when I say this, because there are the exceptions. And then when we get into the workplace, we may, if we're lucky, get exposed to an EQ workshop of some sort or a conflict management workshop of some sort, right? But we've been conditioned over the years that conflict is a negative thing. It's an uncomfortable thing. It's an awkward thing. It's an ugly thing. So we shouldn't do it, which is why a lot of us tend to avoid it, right? But the beauty of conflict is, if you embrace conflict is growth trying to happen. The reason it's uncomfortable is we're being challenged on some level, that it's which makes it uncomfortable. We're either being pushed out of our comfort zone, we're being challenged on a level of a belief system or an opinion or a view that we may have. And it's not about who's right or wrong. It's just about opening our mind to more than one possibility. And how can we hold the space for both without blaming, which is often what happens, particularly couples and relationships, or who's right and who's wrong. And so the beauty of conflict is, if we flip it on its head and reframe it and embrace it, is conflict is actually growth trying to happen. And if we can be open enough to sitting in that uncomfortable space, we can learn a lot about ourselves, we can learn a lot about the other person or persons, and we can learn a lot about the situation, which can help us grow and evolve as individuals.
Yeah, it's interesting because my mother said that when she grew up, her parents had every disagreement they had was in another room. Yeah. They never had it in front of the children. They just felt that those conversations were going to be, not good for the children. But then there's the other extreme where children grow up in life that is purely conflict, and every conversation is conflict with adults, with children. So it's about finding that balance, and I suppose having the tools to manage that for yourself.
Absolutely. We're never not going to have conflict. And conflict doesn't have to be this huge, toxic, screaming match. It can be as simple as, it's a disagreement. I don't agree with your view or your opinion. And that's okay. We're never going to agree with someone 100% of the time, all of the time, because we're all unique individuals. We've had different experiences and different upbringings. So we are going to disagree on things, and that's okay. So yes, it's how do we develop those skills for ourselves, because we've never developed them, or we've never had opportunities to develop them from a generational thing. Your mom and them, that generation, the conditioning was you didn't fight in front of the kids, you did it behind closed doors. You didn't air your dirty laundry in public, you kept it behind closed doors. Whereas now there is, and I'm talking extremes, but there's variations in between. Whereas now you do get real toxic environments as we become more educated around what toxicity is, and bullying and narcissism and manipulation and abuse and all of those kinds of things.
And also the tools to identify when it's happening to you as well. And, yes. and tools to be able to deal with that, whether it is walking away, whether it's having the adult conversation, and removing yourself maybe from an environment where you feel that your views are not fully appreciated, but also in a healthy way, and not just like a teenager slamming the door and saying, you just don't understand me.
Absolutely. And it's about being aware of your own reactivity, when noticing and being aware of, when am I being triggered? How do I know I'm becoming reactive? And what can I do to self-regulate and self-soothe myself and my own reactivity? And that takes years and years and years and years of practice, and getting to know yourself well. And that doesn't mean you're always going to get it right, because we're also human at the end of the day, right? And as human beings, we make mistakes, we mess up, life is messy, and we can fly off the handle. But it's how do we repair the damage after we've reacted in a way that is potentially explosive.
And I think for me, it's also about how I feel inside. So if somebody has a go, on Facebook page, or they, have a go at me, I either feel that, like you say, I've been challenged, something that means something really, it's a deep belief, or it's something that I feel very passionately about, and that feels painful. But also, I suppose there's a human element of someone's making me wrong, and I believe I'm right. And that's not a comfortable place to be either.
Yeah. And I always like to use the analogy, the glass half full, half empty. We're both looking at the same thing, and we're both right and we're both wrong, depending on which side we're looking at it through, right? But it's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's about, we've got this glass and it's half full or half empty, and what can we do with it? How can we use it so that both of us can benefit from it? And that's being able to hear each other's side of the story without making each other right or wrong, to get an understanding, even if I don't agree with you.
Wow, that's you've got a big job, because there's a planet of very angry people out there. I see your second book is about embracing no. Now, you have clearly got the power to say yes, because you've done some amazing things. You've done some physical challenges. Tell us about some of those.
Yeah, so, in my personal life, I am quite sporty and active. I have a little bit of an adventurous streak in me. So I have done some challenging things. I've climbed Kilimanjaro. I've climbed Machu Picchu in Peru. I'm also very sporty from a long distance running point of view. So I've done Comrades Marathon. So for those of you that don't know South Africa, we're a big ultra long distance running community. And the Comrades Marathon is a 90-kilometer race between Durban and Pietermaritzburg, and it alternates every year up and down. And yeah, I was very blessed to have a little bit of raw talent and a coach that saw some potential in me. So, one of my proudest moments is coming 13th overall in the Comrades Marathon from a female perspective, in the female category. So yeah, and earning a silver medal. So that was one of my proudest moments. And then, doing some other crazy charity things like cycling from Sun City to Cape Town over 8 days for charity, for the Argus. So, yeah, I like pushing myself, I guess.
I think we froze. There we go. Okay. Oh, we were frozen there for a second. Oh, I was just going to say, I think that that's amazing, simply because there's so many of us that always talk about it. Oh, that'd be great to do, but we never actually do it. So what do you think is, I think, how do we, because I always want to do a challenge, but in a way there's a personality trait sometimes, isn't there, that someone who can take something like that and push themselves for an end goal? Or do you think anybody could say, okay, I'm going to run the Comrades now and not get to those hurdles of now it's cold and it's wet and it's dark and I don't feel like training and all that stuff? So do you think there's a personality, or do you think that anybody could teach themselves to do those things?
I think anybody can do it if you want it badly enough. And that doesn't mean that on those days when it's cold and dark and rainy and miserable, you're not going to want to hide underneath the duvet and the covers, right? It takes a lot of willpower to get out of that and carry on and follow through. But, that's where you surround yourself with people and support structures that can motivate you and keep you going, whether it's a group of friends that you're doing it with, whether it's a coach that you're working with, whoever. But it's about accountability. So holding yourself accountable, but knowing where potentially you can fall over and then putting those steps in place so that you still have that accountability regardless to get you to your end goal.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting, because I know that I can very easily lose sight of something. And I see friends of mine who have, and I'd like to use that loosely, but an addictive personality. They can addict themselves to the process. And for them, it just becomes normal. And for me, it's more of a struggle sometimes to follow through and just keep going, keep going. And yet I had that as a child. I was a very committed sports girl, and I played sports at quite high levels. And yet, as I've got older, I don't know if that's got less important, or if I found other things, or I don't know why I've lost that edge, I suppose.
Well, you've potentially channeled it in different ways, as you said. Maybe you're channeling it into your business. Maybe you're channeling into your friendships and your relationships. I also think it depends on what life stage we're at and what life milestones we're going through. So as we go through different life stages, our priorities and our outlook and our values in life change. So, for example, young, career-driven, ambitious, you want to climb the corporate ladder. You kind of move into the next stage, which is, settling down. You've got a mortgage and a car, maybe a serious relationship. And so kind of things are a little bit more responsible now. Then you have children, and your whole focus is around children, and family is your priority. And I think as you move through those different life stages, our priorities and our outlook and our motivations change. And then life milestones are those things we kind of tick off that say we're progressing through life. So it's like 18, 21, 30, 40, 50, and you kind of stop counting when you get to 50, right? Because you realize there's such little life left. and so it changes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I love the way you shine the perspective on something very different, because I've never thought of it that way. I've just thought there's something wrong with me because I've just lost it, but yeah, that's really very interesting. So often people write a book because they've been on a journey themselves. So they've either struggled with something, not always. Sometimes it's something that you observe in the world and you think, I have the tools to help people overcome that. But is your Embracing No book about that, you struggling to say no, or has it been something that you've observed with people who you've worked with?
So both of my books are based on personal experiences, but also what I've seen over the years with, people that I've worked with and what they struggle with. And embracing no was around how to put boundaries down, how to say no, and how to be okay with that and not feel guilty about it, because that often comes through with people that struggle to put down boundaries. So I don't like labeling people, but often referred to as the people pleasers. They don't know how to put a boundary down and say no and push back without feeling guilty or having to justify why they're saying no, and make up this whole big story. But it's funny how easily we can accept other people's no's and just take it at face value. But when it comes to us saying no, we feel we have to justify why we're saying no. So that's how both books came about.
Wow. And so now you must find, I mean, of course, life is always a lesson and we learn continuously, even when we have the tools. Do you find the yes or the no easier?
I probably say for me, where I'm at in my life stage right now, I find it easier to say no, because of I know I'm very precious about what adds value to my life. I'm very precious about the people in terms of the energy that I surround myself with and the people that lift me up versus the people that lean and where I feel drained, from that experience. And, for me, it's about quality of life and quality of people and quality experiences.
Yeah, and you talk a lot about healthy relationships. That really forms the foundation of the work that you do. If you could identify what a healthy relationship looks like, then it's easier to go in that direction, because you can both, or a group, or, whoever's involved in that relationship network, it's easier for them to work together. So what would you say are the things that a healthy relationship should strive for or look for or aim to achieve to make it the healthiest it can possibly be?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, people don't realize that our whole world revolves around relationships throughout our entire lifetime. And that relationships is where we get our biggest emotional growth from. But we're not taught how to be in a relationship. We model behaviors based on the relationship we are initially exposed to, which is our primary caregivers, so mother and father. That kind of sets the tone for what we think relationships should look like and feel like. When it comes to a healthy relationship, so from a personal point of view, it's around two people that are able to retain their individuality, but come together with intentionality to co-create the us, we, and the ours, which is their relationship, and then the family dynamics if they're having children, because the children live in between the space between mom and dad. And if that relational space is not healthy, it impacts the children. Yeah. And so a healthy relationship is about how do we recognize and accept each other for the individuals that we are. We come together with intention because we want to, and we see the value in each other, and we want to grow together as a couple, and that we're able to sit in the uncomfortable space and have difficult conversations.
Wow. Yeah. And I think about families that, so I grew up with just a mother, and I wonder if that meant that my view of relationships is very different. It must have an impact on me. But I also sometimes think that I've learned that being on your own is okay. I can survive, and I'm an only child, so I also played games on my own. And I never felt that I needed somebody else for my happiness, or, a friend to make my game fun. And I think there's an element of learned behavior, but I think that there's also possibly a personality trait there that I felt more confident in that space. That I don't know, is that a combination of the two?
Yes, definitely. Every experience in life serves us up to a point because it's been the way that we've survived. It's been the way that we've got to where we are in life. But there gets to a point where it also starts working against you. So my story is similar to you. I grew up without a mother. My mom died when I was 7, so I grew up with a father. And we grew up learning to be self-sufficient. We grew up learning to take care of ourselves. So we grew up learning being very independent, which is a great thing because we get things done, right? Because we just get on with it. on the other side of that, how it can work against us is we don't know how to rely and depend on other people for help. We don't know how to ask for help because it's almost like it's a weakness, or we're not coping, or we can't do it for ourselves, or whatever the stories are that we tell ourselves about why we can't depend on someone else, or we can't trust other people.
That is so true. Goodness me. That is spot on. I learned that from my mother as well, watching her, well, we can move the fridge, the two of us, and if we need to, we can yell down the street and see if there's anyone else who can help us. But it was really, and it's so true, because there was that barrier where my mother then struggled to accept help from other people. And that was where I got very frustrated, especially as she got older. And I think that's a really interesting observation. I love that. Now, you talk about, you obviously help people. You've got loads of wonderful qualifications, and I'm sure that enhances any experience that people have with you, because you're bringing so many other concepts, ideas, and focuses of work. But often we talk about people getting support and help, and they're not quite sure what route they should take. Do they go to a life coach? Are they overwhelmed and may need to go to the doctor, and the doctor then refers them to a specialist? If somebody's really struggling with something, what do you think is their first port of call, and how do they identify which route they go down for therapy or life coaching or go and see the doctor?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is recognizing that there's something wrong, that you don't feel yourself. That's the first step, because when you acknowledge it, so when you own it, you can do something about it, right? As opposed to being in denial. And I guess it's wherever you feel most comfortable, because everybody has its place and everybody adds a different value. So whether it's going to see your GP first, who can then do an assessment and then decide that they need to send you off to a specialist of some sort, that's great. If you feel comfortable speaking to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, that's fine, or a life coach. I think the key difference, and I'm generalizing here, is between psychologists, psychiatrists, or what people often refer to as talk therapy, is I go there and I talk through my emotions and we talk about it, and I process it and stuff like that. And some people like that, and some people feel comfortable with it. Other people, they prefer structure and they want practical tools and things that they can apply and implement. And that's where coaches can provide that kind of value. Not to say that, the clinical medical field can't, they can. So it's finding someone that fits with you, resonates with you, and understands you, and can help you shift from, if I'm here and I want to get here, they can help you shift from here to here. They can help you get unstuck. So it's whatever you feel most comfortable with. But the most important thing is acknowledging that when you need help, to actually do something about it and go and get help.
Yeah, because that's the first thing. And just really feeling that someone could help you, because we often, when we feel not ourselves, we feel like we're the only one in the world experiencing that at that moment, and nobody can help me because nobody understands how I feel.
And also there's the shame and the stigma around being in therapy, that I've got serious issues, mental health issues. And that's not true. Life is messy. And we all go through rough patches where we just need a little bit of help. So I like to use the car analogy. Every year we take our vehicle in for a service because we want it to be reliable and safe and on the road, that it can take us from destination to destination. Why can't we do that for ourselves when we need a little bit of a top up or a little bit of a check-in?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So too many people feel that therapy or life coaching is only if there's a really serious issue. But what you're saying is that it could really have enhance our life experience if we have that regular checkup.
Absolutely. Often people only seek help when they're in crisis. But if we go in and learn, personal development, life is a lifelong journey of learning, as you shared earlier. We're continuously evolving, because as soon as we get to this point, we learn new information and new insights, and we're exposed to new environments. So we're continuously evolving and growing as individuals. And we never get to that point where we go, I finally have it all figured out, because we don't. Okay.
That's a shame.
Yeah. Newsflash, sorry to disappoint you. Because I think if someone had got there, they would have bottled it and sold the formula by now, right?
Absolutely. But the world also changes. So the tools that maybe like my mother would have had at my age in her early 50s those tools probably don't work anymore because the world is so vastly different.
Exactly. And that's where the greatest gift you can give yourself is around personal growth and personal development, but constantly remaining relevant, whether it's in your personal life or in the workspace, but constantly upskilling yourself with tools and knowledge that can help you cope with what life throws your way when you're on the highs and when you're on the lows.
That's amazing. I love that. So what are your top tips for someone today who's just feeling a bit, I'm not quite sure. I just, I've woken up and I don't feel great. What would be your top tips for them to maybe just explore something a little bit deeper for themselves?
Yeah, I think do a check-in from a body scan point of view, and whereabouts are you feeling this? Is it in your head? Is it your neck? Is it your chest? Is it your stomach? What does it feel like? Can you describe it? What do you think? Where do you think it's coming from? What's the source of it? And some people like journaling, so write and journal. Some people like talking out loud or speak into your phone and record yourself. Some people like speaking to someone, speak to someone, but do something about it. Take yourself off for a walk. Research has shown even just 10 minutes outside in nature can change our mindset and change our perspective. So if you think of your emotions as energy, if you're sitting still and staying still, whether it's in your chair or in your room or in the four walls that you're in, that energy becomes stagnant. And there's only so much capacity. So when you get out and move, whether it's walking from one room to the next or going outside for a walk around the block, you're moving that energy, which creates movement for new energy to come in. And even just that in itself, movement can change our mood and enhance our mood. Listening to music, doing something that brings you joy, whether it's painting, puzzles, reading, meditation, whatever it is. But taking care of yourself from a mental health point of view is the greatest gift and responsibility you have for yourself.
And the impact it can have on those around you, because when you're happy, the relationships around you become enhanced, don't they?
Absolutely. And it's not to say that you're not going to have bad days or bad patches. You are. We're all human. We all have them. We all struggle. And that's okay. But the more you take care of yourself, the more you build that resilience muscle to be able to cope on the days when you feel today's a bad hair day.
Yeah, I hate those. Paula, please tell us where people can get a hold of your books and all the work that you do and find you so that they can connect with you if they'd like to know more.
Sure. So my books, you can find them on Amazon and also on my website, paulaquinsee.com. So that's my personal website. I'm on all the social media channels. So I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and my business website is engagedhumans.com.
Fantastic. Paula, it is so lovely to chat. I feel like we could chat for another 5 hours. I feel like I've got my own therapy session here today. So thank you so much. And stay cool in hot Joburg. And I will turn the heating on because I think I'm ready for the heating. But really lovely to chat. And I look forward to chatting to you soon.
Thanks, Dawn. Take care.